Hello, everybody. It's Josh with Hero Marketing. We're just getting started here, so y'all keep on coming in. Just making the last few notes. So let's just give everybody a minute to join. We got a lot of people coming in right now. So hope everybody's doing great today. We're glad to have you guys. I'm excited to introduce our guest here shortly. Hey, while we're waiting on everybody to join, at the bottom of your screen, you've got a couple of things you'll want to use. We have our chat feature, which you're familiar with using Zoom, but we also have our Q&A feature. And so, if you all don't mind, while we're kind of waiting and letting everybody pile in here, jump down there to your chat button down on the very bottom, and just let us know where you're joining from today. It'd be great to know who all we've got on the Zoom right now. And as that is coming in, we have our moderator, Drew, behind the scenes. Drew, I want to thank you for being here today. I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. And so, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and have Mr. Jonathan join in, and I will make introductions for who our guest is today. So, for those of you joining us, we're here at Clicks to Kaching. This is our December Masterclass. We're glad you're here. And Jonathan, it's awesome to have you, man. So, just for everybody joining, we've got Jonathan Torrey, co founder of Searchlight. And I'm going to have him do his intro here shortly. But while we're waiting on everybody to join, just a couple of housekeeping items. We are going to be hosting a live Q&A towards the end of this masterclass. And so you can use the chat feature or you can use the Q&A feature. But if you don't mind, just test them both out right now. You can use a Q&A feature for your question. The one thing that we really want to encourage with all of you is these are intended to be live interactive sessions. We love questions. We love the dialogue and the interaction. So at any point, please jump in and let us know what questions you may have, or if we're talking about something you're not familiar with, we want to hear from you. So, Damon, I see you coming from Kerrville, right down the road. Glad to have you. And Matt, my great friend in Houston, Texas. And great to see you, Matt, and Miss Amy out in Georgia. Thank you for joining, Amy. We've loved working with you guys, and glad you made time to join. So let's get into a little intro here. So, what kind of initiated this masterclass? I've been the owner of Hero for the last 20 years, and I can confidently say in 20 years, I've never had a technology that we have tested and almost immediately implemented for our entire portfolio. Like, I think that's huge. That's really saying something. But one of the biggest challenges that I think you all have as owner operators and that we have as a marketing agency is, as digital has ramped up so quick the last 3 to 5 years, how do we take what you're spending money on, whether it's pay per click, LSA, meta advertising, SEO, Google Business, and then translate that into dollars, and understand where your investment's going? That has always been the biggest challenge for owner operators and for agencies. A lot of you, if you've had an agency experience, you might have had a dashboard where you get a real pretty dashboard that you kind of scratch your head and go, well, this looks really nice, but I don't know what all it is. So what ended up happening is we were introduced to Jonathan and Searchlight. We brought this in and instantly impacted our clients' revenue, ad waste, bottom line, booked jobs. It painted a clear picture. And we're going to get into three real quick case studies here in a minute. But that was the genesis for this masterclass. And so what I want to do today is I want to give you all this information. This is not a pitch. Well, it kind of is a pitch because we think Searchlight's great. But really what this is a very unique opportunity that if you're on Service Titan or House Call Pro, to take a hard look at a piece of technology that can help you run a much better business. You can be more profitable. You can identify leaks quickly, and it really coincides strongly with your operations. So, Jonathan, with all of that said,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us. If you would just give our guest here a quick introduction in your role as a co-founder, and just what is Searchlight?
Yeah. Josh, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and for everybody joining, I'm really excited to get into these details because What Josh had kind of said is, hey, this was an immediate recognition of value. We want to implement this, which for us is a green flag in an agency. And I just want to give a little backstory of Searchlight and how we got here, because this isn't something that we've built overnight. It is incredibly hard to get accurate data. And for the last half decade, Searchlight in our ethos has to be go into the details, verify QA. I've done over 1,000 calls with contractors, operators, GMs, analyzing data, providing insights. I am also the author of the Data Driven Trades. But when we initially started Searchlight, we were an agency. We no longer are. We pivoted into this data platform. That is what we are, revenue attribution. And what we had found early on is that pain point Josh talked about. There's not really a good way to defend your value proposition to make really smart, informed decisions, not only on the revenue, but also the entire customer journey. Is our book rate low, which is causing the low ROAS on Google Ads? Is it, hey, we're not getting into the home of these customers because they're canceling and we need to adjust our strategy? So for about a year, when we got our first few clients and said, hey, we're not seeing enough revenue in the CRM, we're going to have to fire you. I tracked manually lead to revenue. I had 4 spreadsheets going. That was our prototype. I did that for a year. And I found all kinds of insight about where this breaks down, why it breaks down. And we brought in our chief technology officer, who's been building analytics platforms for 25 years, PhD level programmer, with a working prototype that this industry said, hey, there is a need for this. And so over those last 5 years, meeting with clients, getting into the details, QAing one by one by one to make sure that we can help paint the most accurate picture for an industry that has a longer sales cycle. You might have a lead come in September and you don't close that revenue to November. So the ability to handle those use cases and then turn that data into insight and ultimately action that aligns with your business goals. That is why we started to partner with agencies like Hero, because they're on the forefront of, hey, we want to be the best that we can. We want to level up the standard in this industry. We found data we can trust and actually operate ad strategy, pivots, things like that. And Josh is going to take us into the case study. So that's why I'm honored to be here, because this is something that we've worked so hard over for others to see it, but then put it into action to benefit
Mm-hmm.
you all. That's what drives us.
I love it. I love it. Hey, Drew, do me a favor. Let's look at these 3 case studies because I know for me, I'm a visual learner. And for those of you joining us today, I want you to see where the rubber hits the road here. And so, how we are using this. Let's look at case study 1, and I'll kind of get into that. So, one of our clients, a large Texas garage door company, they were spending about 300 a year on Google Ads. They weren't seeing all of this turn into real revenue. So what did we do? Well, this is a newer client. So what we instantly did is we plugged Searchlight into their account. And what that does is, like in the case of Hero, we're all based in Texas. We actually have our paid media team outside of Dallas. And so what happens is we are using Searchlight as the tool within this client's account to then expose and show opportunities to our paid media team. So I think that's important to digest, that we do have paid experts that are using this as a tool. So what we saw is about half the campaigns were generating zero potential revenue. About 12,000 a month was basically being wasted. So this will be called ad waste. The closing rates we felt were far below the target, which meant even the good leads were not converting. So what did we do? Within the first 30 days, we restructured the campaigns. We shut down a demand gen campaign that was burning about 4,500 a month with no returns. We reallocated the budget, and basically here are the results. Revenue potential jumped from 59,000 to 167,000, about 180% increase with the same budget. And then ROAS, or return on ad spend, or some of you might use ROI, return on investment, went from about a 2x to a 5.5x, increasing their unique leads. So, one of my pet peeves, if you guys have done any advertising and you've heard an agency say to you, well, you need to spend more money. I don't agree with that. I don't think that you always have to spend more money if you're not getting the results. But the money that you are spending should be delivering results, and you should know where you're wasting that money. And so Searchlight has been very powerful to show us where the waste is and to show us where the opportunities are. So let's go to our second case study here, Drew.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah,
There's a really, really great question that just came in that aligns very, very well with this case study. Do you mind if I just take that real quick from William?
let's do it.
Yeah, so for everybody listening, William asked, so again, I'm the author of the Data-Driven Trades, and I published a newsletter evaluating unbranded Google ad campaign performance. I broke it out by business units, service, so HVAC, plumbing, electrical. And so William said, I was surprised by the newsletter that shared the unbranded PPC ROAS. So low. He was surprised by it. We currently don't do PPC. We're planning to do it soon, but it made you second guess the plan. How is anyone making money with a ROAS of 2.5 to 3x? So right off the bat, I love this question because Josh's team identified one of the things that I saw was prevalent. 29% of unbranded campaigns had $0 in revenue opportunity in them out of a very large sample. And that is what can drag down those ROAS numbers when you are burning through spend. And this case study right here shows the importance. Yes, Google Ads is a very effective strategy for your business if your agency or your internal teams are watching and looking at the data, because it does change pretty frequently. It's a game if you got to, trial different campaigns and messaging. But if you're not on top of it, we're going to see a 2.5 to 3x ROAS when we have, literally 1 out of 3 unbranded campaigns in HVAC not generating any revenue opportunity. It is really hard to win in that sense. So if you're
Hmm.
not watching that data, making pivots, and this is a great case study of that. So I agree with you, William. Like I think you have to have a little apprehension anytime you're going to spend these dollars. But if you have the proper tracking in place and a team that is watching and knows how to pivot that spend into what is working, there's an opportunity to be successful. There's a lot more that goes into it. We can touch on that, like operational pieces, but this case
Hmm.
study just ties so directly to that.
Yeah, I love that. And that is a phenomenal question. And again, I want to kind of put an asterisk next to this that these are intended to show instantaneous fixes. Naturally, we want to see that ROAS increase, and that's a good question. So I actually pulled that data up this morning with Casey, our director of client strategy. So in our last 30 days, here's some numbers for you guys. Our portfolio as a whole, which the size of Hero, that's going to be about that are in paid advertising. This is going to be about 35 clients that are in what we pulled today. About 270,000 ad spend over the last 30 days, 7.64 million in revenue potential, average ROAS about 14x. So do we see these case studies and these ROAS as a good starting point? Absolutely. Do we want to see those climb and get closer to that average of 14x? Absolutely. Um, so let's look at case study 2 here. This is an HVAC and plumbing client in New Hampshire. What we did was we used Searchlight to analyze their last 60 days. And here were the 3 opportunities that we identified. First, we're using revenue-based geo-targeting. And so basically what happens there is when we do an onboarding with the client, and this is a great thing for you guys to look at. So if you're taking notes, jot this down as like a quick takeaway that you can do with your team. Pull your last 12 months of revenue and look at your top zip codes and look at your advertising and all of your efforts, and are they overlapping with those top zip codes? Because what we see a lot of people will do that tends to take your money and stretch it too far is you start getting your service area too wide. And so what ends up happening is you start burning 10%, 15, 18% of your budget in zip codes that are truly not converting or might not be your top revenue zip codes. So what we did with this client is we're looking at their top revenue-based geo targets or zip codes. Uh, Searchlight revealed to us which zip codes historically drove the highest average tickets. We used Searchlight's feedback to validate the campaign, and then we made the dynamic budget pivots. The results over the next 60 days, this client closed 43 and a half in revenue on just 9,000 in spend, which was a 52% increase period over period. The biggest thing that we like with this client, because they were focusing on their top zip codes, is if you look at their average ticket value, it climbed from 1293 to over 3300. So that's one of the metrics that we're looking at monthly with our clients is not only do we want to see that growth in your business and the return on your ad spend, we want to also see that growth in your average ticket cost. And then I think we have one more case study here, Drew. And William, thanks for the question. Awesome question. You guys keep them coming. Um, So this was a very small pivot. This is a very big client, but a very small pivot. So what was interesting here is this client is running multiple campaigns, and I don't know how many of you are on Meta. I'd be curious for y'all to throw into chat how many of you are running Meta campaigns. I'm a bit indifferent on Meta and when and how you should use it. But in the case of this client, what we found was that the Meta brand campaign were generating tons of impressions, but that was not translating downstream into customers. Meanwhile, their YouTube ads, which we have, they use Spectrum for production, so they have great YouTube commercials. YouTube was actually doing a better job of influencing the early stage sales funnel. So what we did is we shifted a very small budget away from Meta to test using Searchlight's data. And in 3 weeks, what we found is that the Google brand campaign had validated that with this move, they saw a 16% increase in revenue potential. So, again, these are not intended to be these. We can go into more data, and Jonathan, I'm certain, can go into a lot more case studies. This is what this is intended to show you guys is if you put Searchlight into your campaigns right now, what would you see over the next 30 to 60 days, and how would you implement that? So, Jonathan, let's talk a little bit about implementation. If somebody is familiar with Searchlight or not, and they're thinking, well, gosh, in January, I'd love to put this into my Service Titan and see. What are we looking at from an implementation standpoint? Do you need an agency to be running this? Can an owner operator run it? What does that look like as far as actual implementation?
Yeah, that is a great question because anytime that you're talking about data, it's scary. How much work do I have to do in order to get this live? How do we make sure we get this right? So we have a phenomenal onboarding team that we've invested in. Elena Levant, our director of operations. If you know her, I am sure, and if you've interacted with her, you know that she's an absolute rock star. Jacob just joined our team. Sam just joined our team. Lucas is our other co-founder, COO. We have a very comprehensive onboarding process. So we build out, there's an onboarding sheet where we walk you through the data that we need to collect. Because here's what's really important. Searchlight is not just pulling data from your CRM and revisualizing it. We are taking data in from multiple siloed sources, your call tracking provider, online scheduling, direct API integrations with Meta, with Google, with Bing, pulling in that spend data, your CRM data, could be ServiceSite and House Call Pro. We have a number of other integrations with more on the way. So we're bringing all this data in, and we've built attribution logic to really understand the sales cycle for a customer, make sure we can attribute to the right channel and follow all of that ensuing activity, putting customers in those proper buckets. So you will have an onboarding call. We've got a welcome packet. We really handhold through that process to make sure that you're successful. Because one of the things that we see is really the fundamentals. DNI, dynamic number insertion. I've run into people who aren't aware of what that is. That is a really great way. That is paramount to have set up properly. When I click on a Google ad, I land on your website, the phone number swaps so we know where this customer came from. We also have checks in place. We have our own pixel that goes on your website, very lightweight first-party data, where we see all of the referral information, the campaigns, all of those things that we can check against the call tracking provider. We can check against the CRM, and we turn that into a time series events based on the customer. So again, we get really accurate about what affected each step of that process. So in order for us to make you successful, we need to make sure that we know all of the campaigns that you're running, all of the ad channels. You'd be shocked at how many people are unaware that they have LSA messages turned on. They're unaware that they still have Bing spend from an agency they used 2 years ago that's still running. So we uncover a lot of that. We provide best practices. How do you get the right naming conventions on your call tracking campaigns? Because sometimes we'll see main number is responsible for 80% of your phone calls. We don't have any further details, and we leverage our photon tag, and we can see that. And we can say, hey, we need separate numbers for these. So we provide a lot of those best practices. We do that onboarding call. We do that go live training. So once the data is live, we have a 3-step QA process that is very detailed. Kudos to our team to make sure that data is flowing, to make sure that nothing looks funky. I mean, they've done this thousands of times. So we really are your partner in that process in making sure that we're getting access to all the data. And a natural consequence of that is you all get really disciplined and detailed about what are we running, how much are we spending, who is managing this for us. And then we do that initial review to show you how to walk through the data, what to look for. And there's usually some pretty quick wins and action items, but it's just a nice reset to get that baseline and that foundation. So onboarding sheet, onboarding team, welcome packet, onboarding calls, three-step QA process, and then doing those three trainings afterwards just to make sure everybody understands what we're doing. We have great support documentation, and our team is always available after. But that sums up the process. We've really invested in that.
So, Jonathan, what is the typical timeline from interest to actual implementation where you start seeing Searchlight working for you?
Yeah, really great question because what's fascinating about and I come from an automotive background. I know my intro is a little bit more focused on Searchlight. I'll pause for a second and explain where the heck I come from. Why do I like data so much? So my junior year of college, I took a course in econometrics, which tries to tease out causality between two variables. And being in college, I wanted to see the impact of alcohol on GPA. So I did my own surveys. I did an econometric model, and what I found is the more alcohol consumed, the more classes you missed, the more that it impacted your GPA. And that was my first foray into data is really interesting. And my first job out of college, I worked at a startup that did Facebook advertising back in 2011. Everybody thought teenagers were on that platform, and they didn't believe us that we could actually generate a ROAS. We were doing it by hand. We worked in CPG, but then we proved to automotive that people you could convert customers from Facebook, and the numbers were crazy. It was very inexpensive, and we got acquired by dealer.com, where I spent that time. So it's so interesting to come into this vertical, 'cause a little similar to auto, that's a longer sales cycle, but it's also very seasonal. So for us, our business is seasonal. Usually in the shoulder season, we see this huge influx in demand. So right now, you typically will schedule a demo with someone on our sales team. For most people, they see it, they say, okay, like let's get this process going. 1 to 2 days we get that onboarding sheet. Will that welcome kit. We'll start to talk you through that. Some of it is dependent on like, hey, our agency's getting back to you the information, and again, we help shepherd that process. We are in our absolute busiest time right now, so the implementation from hey, you want to sign up with us to getting the data live is about 15 days, but to call back on auto, 15 business days, but to call back on auto, it's really month 3 when things start to roll, because what happens is say you sign up with us today, you launch December 15th. That's when we start tracking your data. You can do some backfills, but there's things missing because we don't have our photon tag. You generate a bunch of leads the day before Christmas because there's a cold snap, but those aren't going to hit until January, maybe even February. So we do lose a little bit of that when we don't have that history. So the sooner you start, the better, but it's usually by month 3, you're capturing those customers that had a bit of a longer sales cycle, probably replacements, lead at the end of January. The revenue isn't recognized until February, and we always do based on the latest activity, like your accounting software, that revenue shows up in February. So we really say, like, give it that 90 days. That first month, the ROAS is going to look a little bit lower because we don't have all those leads from, if you signed up today, from November bleeding into this. So give it that 90 days to really get that full picture.
Love it. Okay, I want to challenge you guys to throw some questions back in here, because one of the things that I've seen, I'm curious to know how many people on this call are struggling with your marketing attribution. So if you go into your CRM and you look at all of your channels, how many of you are guilty of majority of your leads are quote Google? They're coming from Google. Versus how many of you have put in the time and energy to really break out your lead sources? So that's kind of question number one. And then question number two, I'm curious to know how many of you are using dynamic number insertion and using something like a call rail or call tracking. Um, because I know for when we implement this with a client, it is just as critical that our client's service titan is set up properly as it is to have Searchlight set up properly so that the two are speaking to one another and that we're getting accurate data. Because one of the things that we do at Hero that I feel is very unique, and I haven't really expressed yet our setup, but Hero's 20 years old. And our core leadership have all worked in 8-figure operations. So whether it's Jessica, who's worked in dispatch and analysis, our director Casey, who's run a large 8-figure operation with the two owners, Kelsey, who's worked both in the 8-figure operation side, the call center, and the marketing side, so she knows both ends. But one thing really unique about us is that when you work with Hero, your core leadership are people who have actually built quite sizable trades businesses. And so one thing that we're always doing is we are looking at, we're firm believers that marketing and operations, um, it's a non-negotiable in our mind anymore. Those two things have to work in absolute unison. And Brandon, I see your note here that marketing attribution is the biggest problem we have. I would say that's a one of the bigger problems when we meet with clients that they come to us with is we're not fully sure where our leads are coming from, and we're not fully sure what they're costing us, and we're not fully sure what they're making us. Well, it's like that kind of age old quote, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. So a lot of what we want to do on the front end is work with our clients to really understand their marketing attribution and their setup and their data. Because if we can get the data right and know the numbers, it makes things very easy when we're implementing Searchlight and we're looking at our clients' monthly report. So what we do at Hero, here's three things we do, and these are three takeaways that you all could do, whether you're working with us or working with somebody else, or if you have your own internal team. Every Monday, mid-morning on Monday, we have our in-house analyst that's going to look at every client's dispatch board. And what we're doing with that data is going directly to our paid media team, and we're going to adjust the campaigns based on the need of the trucks and the technicians and the dispatch board. So that's number one is are you making weekly pivots with your strategy based on the demand? The second thing that we do that's a great thing for you guys to do internally if you're not already is every Friday we have an internal team meeting and we're looking at our clients' financials, every one of them. And we're looking at the trailing 7 days, we're looking at the trailing 30 days and the trailing quarter. And then we make adjustments every quarter because we always know we have that money hanging out there. So, what we're looking for there is we're looking for trends, either positive trends and how can we continue to capitalize on the growth, or negative trends. Was it a client in Chicago and one of their trucks was broken into, so they're down a truck this week and we can't help that? Is there possibly a dispatch fee problem, and so we're losing leads? Utilizing Searchlight to really tell us that information. And being proactive off of that information. So those are the first two things you can do is your Monday morning dispatch. Are you using that to pivot your spin and your strategy for the week? Your Friday tag ups, are you holding yourself and your team accountable to look at the numbers every Friday? And then the third thing that we do is when a client onboards with Hero, we find out when they close their books each month. After they close their books, about 3 to 5 days after, our analyst goes in to their CRM, pulls all of their data, and we're looking at all of their KPI and performance data. And that's actually a requirement is to sit down with our team and we're going to look at that collectively because one of the things that we've coined at Hero is what's called ownership perspective marketing. So I've owned 4 other companies. Our directors worked in a big company. Our client strategist has worked in a big company. Like we've all had or reported to the boss. So the way we look at it is you as our client are the boss. And so if we are sitting down with you and we're looking at this data collectively every single month, and we know we have that standing meeting, then we can make those pivots accordingly and help you grow the business of your dreams. That's ultimately what we're all here for. It looks like, is it Natalie? We use an answering service and then go through Service Titan for our calls. Can you still track calls when they're coming through a third party company? Great question, Jonathan. I'll ask you that. So can you still track your calls if they're going through a third party company?
Yeah, we still do. Yep, we pull on the service side and calls. And we do see those setups. And we do provide the best practices. Again, that the naming conventions are so important. We do have our photon tag and we do have something proprietary internally. We call it call view resolution, where we can connect some of the dots, but we do give you those best practices where we're making sure those things are set up properly to get you the most accurate, clean data that you can. And to follow on to that, it is not just phone calls. It's all conversion sources. When I first started the Substack, actually, one of the most popular articles I looked at, Schedule Engine and how much revenue that was converting. And then chat.
Mm-hmm.
So chat tools, a couple years ago, people didn't really think is online chat really going to generate revenue? We did find that. We did find high tickets, LSA messages. So various conversion tools, we pulled that because again, it's not just about where your customer converted. It's also how did they convert Because you might be thinking, Natalie, like, do I want to pay X amount per month for an online scheduling tool if I don't think my customers are going to use that to convert? The Searchlight platform can help measure that. Here's how much revenue, here's how many customers, here's the percentage. Is it net new? Is it cannibalizing? So we pull in all of that data.
I'm curious, Jonathan, what's your thought on text messaging? She says here, we're finding more and more people are messaging us instead of calling. I'm curious for the others on the call if you're seeing the same. Um, what is the data that you guys have on calls versus text message?
Yeah. Phone calls still generate the majority of conversions. It's going to be about 80%. But really, the way that I look at it and the way that I answer these questions, typically the foundation is I want to better understand my customer behavior, and it changes rapidly because you have an entirely new audience month by month, day by day. Your audience in September might look a lot different than your audience now in November with a cold snap, or excuse me, December. My gosh, it's almost Christmas with a cold snap coming. The behaviors are going to be different. When we saw the cold snap right before Christmas, or it was on Christmas Eve, this was 2 or 3 years ago, we
Hmm.
saw a crazy spike in chat messages, online scheduling because the phones were busy. So it's not always a constant. It's not always a 0 or 1 black and white. Yes, this, yes, that. The majority, again, of customers that we're seeing so far, they're going to call your business about 80% pretty consistently. But there may be different time periods, seasonally, different markets where that makeup might look a lot different for your business. So that's why,
Hmm.
again, it's really important. But Josh, I really like you said we look at this data on a weekly cadence because there's so many variables that come into play for us to take the right action items again that align with our business.
Yeah, I want to give you guys another tip. Gosh, for so long we've talked about CPL, cost per lead. And I think it was probably about 3 years ago. I was working with Weldon Long. Many of you know Weldon, great guy, so smart, such a leader in this space. And he actually was talking with me about revenue per customer instead of cost per lead or cost per customer. We actually are looking at a metric through Searchlight that I hadn't heard about before that our team loves, and that is average cost per paying customer. So I was talking with Casey, our director, before this, and I was like, what are you and your team looking at on a weekly basis with the clients and with Searchlight? And here's kind of what she told me were the main metrics she's looking at. So if you're using Searchlight or if you're thinking of using it, jot these down. So average cost per paying customer using that metric as opposed to cost per lead. We're looking at average ticket. Naturally, we want to see that growing. We're looking at who booked, who paid, and who canceled. And one thing I want to unpack here, because Casey said this is really a critical metric. And Jonathan, I'm going to kick this off to you because we're looking at estimated revenue. Well, if your salesperson has gone out and given a good, better, best scenario, how do we figure estimated revenue? And I know that Searchlight goes in and it pulls directly from the CRM and it does that. So let's talk about if you're looking at this from a forecasting tool and you're looking specifically at estimated revenue, and you've got a model where again your salesperson is maybe given two or three options for pricing, Jonathan,
Yeah.
how is Searchlight pulling estimated revenue from open opportunities?
Yeah, I love this question so much because it calls back to just the level of detail that we went through 5 years ago, to really identify again where does quote unquote bad data come from. We take the average of those estimates. So a lot of people, when you go to download your unsold estimates, estimated revenue, you see a really, really large number, which in some senses it's valid. It's, hey, we gave this person three estimates, good, better, best, and most systems tend to sum those up and say, hey, here's your total. But within the Searchlight sales pipelines for that estimated revenue, it is the average of the three. So it's one number per customer, so there's no double counting. But we have these three buckets: estimated, sold, and closed. And we move customers in and out of those buckets based on their latest activity. So if you have an estimate on December 1st, but you close and the work is completed on December 10th and you're looking at the data today, I only show up in that closed bucket. We take you out of estimated because we don't want to double count. And that's where the clarity piece is really, really important. about understanding where are my customers in this funnel. So if you think about forecasting, if we left all those estimates in there, you would have false confidence, a false positive that, oh, we have this huge pipeline that we can go work. Where the reality is we take one per customer and we have a customer list. So you can see the actual customers that make up that list. And in that customer list, we show all the events. You can see all of the estimates that were given, when they were given. So you can use that list to then go activate and follow up with those customers. But that's the nuance of the data. It's really, really important. So we take that average so we don't double count and you get a very clear picture of what your pipeline looks like the day that you're looking at that data.
I love that. And on that note, I do want to give a shout out to another platform that is very important to use in this mix, and that's going to be Chirp. We all play nicely in the sandbox here, and I'm not trying to propose that you need to go build like this whole new data stack, but the reality is, as fast as everything is moving, if you don't know your numbers, it's very hard to build a successful and profitable business, especially for those of you who are like, I really am wanting to grow my EBITDA because I want to sell my business. I had a great call with a guy yesterday. Um, he's already up to close to 5.5 million. He knows his numbers very well. He's wanting to grow his EBITDA because his goal is to exit in the next 3 to 5 years. And so I love that. He knows where he wants to be and he knows he needs to know, well, what tools do I need to get there? So one of the things that we at Hero love, well, two things, Searchlight and Chirp. So Searchlight is such a great accountability tool for us because it allows us to do our job extremely well and maximize the revenue potential for our customers on their campaigns. Then additionally to that, because it does show, open opportunities, we then are backfilling with Chirp and we're using Chirp to rehash those estimates. And we actually had a master class, I think it was in July. It's on our YouTube channel, Market Like a Hero. And we had Justin on with Chirp, and we had a couple other great people. Contractor Commerce was on there, USA Today, but the focus shifted quite a bit to Chirp. He was definitely the star of the show, and I can see why, because we probably have, I bet 80% of our clients are on Chirp and 100% are on Searchlight. The exponential growth some of these clients are seeing is really unbelievable. So if you guys are not looking at Chirp as an additional piece of technology, I would highly recommend that you do, because what I've seen is of everything we have implemented or tried or seen our clients try, we are coming back to Searchlight and Chirp as the two absolutes to run a successful business. And our clients are anywhere from probably on the low end, 3.5, 4 million a year, and then clients well into the eight figures. So the interesting thing for us, and this kind of goes back to I think it was Williams, question of, well, what numbers are you seeing? Because we have clients across the nation, most are in HVAC and plumbing. We can really pull and compare numbers and use the data from one business to really help another business. And we love that because we have a big pool to choose from. So just kind of make note of that. If you're not using a tool for rehashing, the very first thing I would do is I would go into your CRM and I would look at your open estimates. And if it's a fairly large amount, you would be shocked at how these automation tools can work on your behalf 24/7 and bring those lost opportunities back to the table for you. I mean, and we're talking big numbers. We're talking clients that have implemented this and are 30 to 80,000 more a month starting out in estimates that they thought were long gone for good. Okay, let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit. So yes, I can type the name
And
of the tools there for you.
yeah, and if I can, Josh, because I actually have some data with Chirp, and I can just make a comment on that because I wholeheartedly agree. And the thing I really respect Chirp for, they found out about the Searchlight data, right? And we're a digital marketing attribution platform, so we're looking at this inbound piece of the equation. They said, "Hey, we want to work with you to develop analytics for the outbound side. We're going to put that in our packaging. We want this to be part of the offering. It's a totally separate dashboard. It's a different view. It's a different look." So I respect that they made those investments because they wanted to be able to tell that part of the story. And I am looking at my latest Substack. These are accounts that have been on Chirp for a year that generated $264,560 in closed revenue per business in October. And again, we have this events driven system logic. This isn't like, oh, Chirp texted everybody and it gets all of the credit. No, we're looking at, is there a net new booking after? Like, where did that text come in? And can we justify that, hey, that influenced this, that caused this person to come back and say, end up booking? That's 100 customers at a $2,645 average ticket. And when we're looking at the size of unsold estimates in these pipelines, there's just it really is. I do implore people, please focus on that rehash piece. You don't need to spend more on marketing to do that. And Chirp now also has that data to tell that story, to refine the campaigns, to refine the messaging. We've worked so hard. You've spent so much, $500-600 to acquire a paying customer on Google. Don't let them go. And that is really,
Hmm.
really, so I'm glad to hear Josh thinking that way, because we are really thinking of this entire customer journey, and how do we keep people in our ecosystem.
Yeah, and you guys don't forget to throw your questions in the Q&A or in the chat. We're going to be getting to more of those. We're getting, going through the hour here pretty quickly, so we want to make sure that for any of you that have any questions at all, big or small, throw them in there. Let's talk a little bit about AI and LLM. So for those of you who may or may have not heard the large language model term, that's kind of that and like GEO. Those are some of the new terms really being thrown around with AI. And one thing that I found really interesting before we started this is Jonathan and I were talking about, well, what percentage of business is actually coming into these clients off of chat and AI and because I don't think you can turn Instagram on anymore without somebody yelling at you that SEO and PPC is dead, and that could not be further from the truth. So what are you guys seeing from a voice search AI chat model as far as actual numbers that are generating leads and business for your customers?
Yeah, I love this question, and I always answer it. I start and say, look, like our job is really to deliver as much unbiased data as we can. It's really easy to put narrative spins around things, and I try not to take sides. I try not to really form too many strong opinions, because we are the keepers of the data, and at no point do I want people to think a certain narrative serves us. And frankly, if LLM started to explode in use, that would benefit Searchlight, because more people would want to get on our platform to see if they're missing opportunity. But the short of it is, when it comes to conversions, lead volume, revenue, we aren't seeing much of any impact yet from LLMs. It's very minimal. And I'll say this: I looked at 1,000 company sample. I looked at the top 1% performers, and I want to share that data because it did generate meaningful close revenue for those businesses, and that exists, and there is upside there. So I want to make sure I present everything, so to speak, and try to be as unbiased as I can. But looking at the sample set, again, 1,000 businesses across the United States, it's not small. 76% of businesses in that sample, they got zero unique leads from LLMs. We're talking ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity. So we're looking at Microsoft Copilot. So we're looking at all of those. Three-quarters of businesses got zero leads. And I have my Substack pulled up because I want to make sure that, I've got these numbers here. So LLMs, just looking at traditional digital, like PPC, organic, and LLMs, AI, LLMs generated 0.15% of that total revenue opportunity in November. So it was about $700,000 of revenue opportunity across a sample of 1,000 accounts. So again, there is revenue opportunity coming in. It's just very small right now. However, the top 1% of businesses in this sample, it's 10 out of 1,000. They got $22,702 in total revenue opportunity from LLMs. So there are some
Hmm.
businesses where that's meaningful. And when I look, and then the top 1% of businesses got $13,305 in close revenue. That was 37% as much close revenue as Google organic. So now
Hmm.
it's like, for those top 1%, this is becoming a real conversation where, hey, there is this activity. And I'm just going to share one final stat, and this is where I think, the average contractor maybe gets a little bit like, hey, what does this mean for me, and how should I be thinking about this? I'm trying to find the stat, but it's something like the majority, I think it was 96% of businesses in the sample, they didn't get any closed revenue from LLM. So the majority aren't seeing much yet. And there is going to be the question, is that just a function of demand via these tools? Is it AI optimization? We don't know that yet. I didn't go through all 1,000 sites to see, are they AI optimized? What does that even mean? And what are those definitions? But it is something that we want to be tracking and keep an eye on because it can change and it can change rapidly. But the bottom line for us right now, looking at very large data sets, the data is not really speaking to me to say, hey, there's a lot of people shifting away from Google to go use LLMs to find HVAC
Hmm.
electrical contractors.
Yeah, yeah, we're actually seeing the same, and I appreciate you saying that because what I don't like about social media is the fear mongering. And so if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, oh my gosh, like if we're not adapting to AI, like we're going to lose our business in 6 months. We actually have written our own app for AI. And what we're doing is our app actually goes in and analyzes a site as compared to what it needs to show up on ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude and all these. And we are putting a lot of work into preparing sites for AI. So I think there's a fine balance there of if you're doing nothing at all to prepare for AI search, that's quite dangerous. But at the same time, if you're like, well, we're going to stop paid and stop SEO and only focus on AI, that's way the wrong direction to go right now. One metric I did want to give you guys, and I had this note up from earlier when we were talking about cost per paying customer. Um, Jonathan's mentioned he does a lot of calls, and at Hero, that's a lot of my responsibility. Casey and Kelsey and the team do a great job running this business day in and day out. And a lot of what I do is I meet and consult with business owners. And one thing that I'm really surprised about is how many people are grossly overpaying for leads on Google. So I wanted just to kind of give you guys some homework. So two things on Google. Number one, intellectual property. And you're going to hear me talk about this on every masterclass. You need to make sure that you own your website. You need to make sure that you own your hosting, and you need to make sure that you own your Google ad account. And what do I mean by that? Well, I talked to a lot of companies, a lot of big companies that whenever they originally started advertising, the agency set up an MCC, or they basically set up an account on behalf of the client. Where that's dangerous is that if you ever leave this agency, you do not take that account. They cannot transfer it to you. They own that account number. So everything that you've done is no longer your intellectual property. And most of the times we found that agencies won't share this data. So we cannot look at past campaign performance. We can't look at campaign setup, keyword setup, et cetera. So make sure that if you're running PPC, you own your ad account and have your admin log in into that. If you are, what I would recommend is I'd recommend you go back and pull the last 11, 12 months, and I would look at your average cost, either CAC, cost to acquire a customer, or CPL, cost per lead. If you are north of $350 a lead, you need to stop right where you're at and we need to have a conversation. Because what we're seeing is the biggest way for companies to just blow their budget is their campaigns are not set up properly. And so they're paying so much for a lead that they're burning through their budget every month, and or it's making it very hard to get a return on their investment. So I pulled our numbers over the last 30 days. Our entire portfolio averages 182.13 cost per paying customer. So that's just a kind of a pro tip. And then if you would, Drew, pull up Hero's website. So if you guys are wanting some things that you can do with your team, we've got a few free resources here. You can go to heromarketingagency.com/resources. And Drew's going to put that link in the chat here. The biggest thing that I love is the one on the left, the home service playbook. So this is actually the same playbook that we use with new customers to really outline where they're at in a game plan for success. This is a PDF. It's a free download. I promise I'm not going to spam you. It's not tied to any kind of a drip campaign or anything. These are just free PDFs that you can download. But as you're sitting there going, hey, we really are still putting the final pieces in place for 2026, the home service playbook is a great place to start. The tech readiness workbook is more, it's not tech like technician, it's more tech like your tech stack, on just kind of where you are as a business. And then is your website AI ready? These are just intended to be some good kind of Q&A things that you can go through with your team and really opens up the dialogue and shows where opportunity might be for your business. So feel free to go download those. Um, so I think here's kind of one of my final thoughts is this is such an interesting time of year because this is a time of year where we're budgeting with our clients and we're preparing for 2026. But we know that in most cases, if you're in HVAC especially, you're really not going to see the ramp start until March. And so a lot of January and February are your comfort club, you're fixing problems from last year, we're planning, we're dialing in. If somebody's like, hey, I'm going to get through Christmas, I want to sign up with Searchlight, I want to implement in January. It sounds like I think you said 15 business days to start, but really about 2 months to start getting data. So if you're working backwards from the year and you want data starting in March when it starts hitting and becoming your busy season, if you're onboarding and implementing Searchlight in January, it sounds like that's very doable, that you're starting to get some measurable and accurate kind of actionable data by spring. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, and you will get data, like you would get data the day that you go live, right? It just builds on itself and getting that complete picture. But again, a natural consequence of our detailed onboarding process is it really is an opportunity to vet your structures, your setups, your call tracking, all of the spend that you're running. So I do
Hmm.
think that's really important. I do tell people that like when we're not as busy is a really great time to get into these tedious details. And part of the value proposition I talk about with our dashboard is the data helps us to start the right targeted conversations that align with the business outcomes we are looking to achieve in a certain time period. So we
Okay.
see some data point that looks a little off. We have industry benchmarks in our core application as well. I mean, you see the Substack, but we now have a view that's just part of the core where you can go and see how does my book rate compare to my peers? How do I, and for Google Ads and beyond. It's a good time to really audit your business top to bottom so that when you do get to those busy seasons, you're prepared and you
Hmm.
know how to go about it. And like you said, Josh, operations and marketing really tied at the hip there. I think is very, very
Hmm.
important.
I love that. And I love the accountability factor because I think, being a business owner myself, it can get kind of lonely at times if you don't have those people that you can come to and compare notes and compare data. And man, this is great. Any further questions from anybody? Feel free to throw them in the chat. We've got just a few minutes here. We'll make sure and address those before we leave. But I think as y'all are thinking through any final questions, my encouragement would be hold yourself and your business to a high standard. We've been doing this a really long time. And one thing that we're super proud of is we do feel like we are partners with our portfolio of clients. We win together, we lose together, we have hard conversations. And so, what I would say is if you don't have a partner that is bringing you these kind of ideas and really sitting down with you and saying, what is the roadmap to building a bigger and more successful business? How big do you want to get? We have clients that say, I want to grow 30%. We have clients that say, I want to double. Um, I'd love to visit with you. Feel free to schedule a discovery call with me and with Hero. These are super low pressure. We're going to look at your business. We're going to decide if there's a fit, see if there's areas that we can help you. But if you're like, man, I need to make a change for 2026 and I need a partner that's more vested in my success, we'd love to visit with you. Drew, it looks like we do have a question that popped up. How do you track the customer who actually visited the website through LLM initially but didn't close? But after some days, a visitor came back. That gets into more of the question of what was the original traffic source of this customer. So, Jonathan, I'll kick that one off to you. That's a big question.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a big question, but it's not necessarily because we have the events data so we can see, customers will sometimes convert multiple times. But what we're really after as a business is what is the channel that drove that initial conversion, that initial contact to the business, and what does the rest of those events look like? Did they book an appointment? Did they not book an appointment? So we aren't doing any view through attribution. We're not going to give an LLM credit if they came to the website, left, see that through our Photon Pixel. But really, what's going to get credit is, hey, did this channel drive that conversion that led to net new revenue opportunity? Did it lead to a new book
Hmm.
appointment? Did it lead to that? We look at 90-day windows. which we have found that the majority of your customers within 90 days are going to do all the business for that sales cycle. If you're doing an install, usually it's about 30, but we have a 90-day window where we're looking at what interaction, what channel initiated that first conversion that led to work. Say they do, say 90-day period, say they convert via an LLM, submit their lead, they book an appointment for a hot water heater replacement. They get that done. Then their furnace goes out a week later and they come in via organic. We still see that they came in via organic. And if we shrink that time frame, we still see that conversion. But the originating source, how they found out about your business was from that LLM. That LLM would then get credit for that furnace install because it happens within 90 days. We're saying, hey, this channel is where your customer discovered the business. They might have a couple revenue events. Again, most customers can be either coming in for one thing, 90 days, that is going to be that period. We'll see all the events. We can see the multi-touch, things like that. But we're originating to that initial source. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up. They try to get really fancy about, well, I want this multi-touch attribution model. We are working on customer level data where you can see all of the different touch points in that influence. But my experience with doing over 1,000 calls, working with thousands of contractors, we have to keep it simple and consistent. Here's what drove the revenue activity. This channel is where your customer converted. This is the blocking and tackling of when they have a need, where are they going? What are they doing? How are they converting? Because we could spend hours talking about, well, there's influence here and touch points there, and there's certainly a use for that. But what we really want to know is when my customer has a need, what are they doing? And am I there when they do that? And do I have the least amount of friction for when they have that need to setting up the appointment, to us getting into the home, to us hopefully doing that work if we win that business. So there's no view through right now on our platform. It's that 90-day cycle where we attribute to that first conversion, that channel that started that customer journey. And then we look at all of the activity in those 90 days. Now, if that customer comes back 6 months later through organic, that's a new track. And that organic would get credit for that because, hey, it's been 6 months. The customer, they're familiar with your brand now. They will show up as existing in your data. We have logic to look at when the customer record is created. Are they new versus existing? So we have all of that information and we can see that and create segments against that. But that would be a new sales cycle. Or they come back a year later. Hey, a year's a long time. They come back 5 years later. They might not remember that they even worked with you. Maybe they come in via organic this year, 5 years from now, they come back to replace something else. And they come in via a Facebook ad. Like Facebook would then, in that instance, get that credit. So we kind of have those 90-day sales cycles.
I love it. I love it. Great explanation. And I think kind of the last takeaways, and we're going to be wrapping up here, is um, training your CSRs. When that bubble pops up, what are we doing with the bubble? Because it can be real easy just to click Google. So we do offer CSR training because it's really important as the front line that they are classifying calls the right way. And then the other thing that we're doing is we are listening and doing we are vetting a lot of our clients' calls, and because we want to hear what's happening on the front end, so that we can then go back to the owner operators and give education and understand. We had a kind of a unique case earlier this year where we had one specific lady in the call center that was really costing a lot of the opportunities, and we would not have really discovered that if we weren't doing the call tracking and then qualifying and listening to the calls. So again, I think it comes back to just putting in the hard work, having the technology stack to support you and knowing your numbers. But for everybody that's come in today, we appreciate you joining. We hope you got some value out of this. Again, reach out to Jonathan or the team at Searchlight if you're looking for an opportunity to implement this in your 2026 plan. And then if you're looking for a partner that really follows the ownership perspective idea of marketing, we'd love to visit with you at Hero. So you can find us online at heromarketingagency.com. You can check out our other videos on YouTube. Just look at Market Like a Hero. And we'll be doing more of these into 2026. So stay on our list. You guys have a great and safe Christmas. And thank you for joining us today.